Okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Cecilia Asbridge. I'm an independent facilitator with the New Brunswick Association for Community Living, and this is our presentation on the Disability Support Program and independent facilitation. So just quickly, our agenda tonight. First, we'll start with introductions, which I actually just did. Some information about NBACL for those who might not be familiar. Then we'll move into a discussion about the Disability Support Program, discussing eligibility as well as how you might know if you need a disability support plan. Then we'll move on to my role, independent facilitation, and we'll get into person-centered planning, community connections, the types of DSP supports that are available, commonly requested supports, some frequently asked questions, and then I'll provide all of our regional contacts for independent facilitation. And then we'll open up the floor to questions. If anybody has questions throughout the presentation, if you could hold them till the end, that would be great. If you have a really pressing question though, or any issues like with seeing the presentation or hearing me, if you could put that in the chat. If you don't see the chat feature on your screen, you can press Alt-H and it will open the chat bubble and you can send a message and I can respond to questions when there's a natural break in the presentation. All right, so we'll get started. So for those who might not be familiar, I know I did see some familiar faces in the participant list, but for those who might not be familiar, the New Brunswick Association for Community Living, or NBACL, is leading in the creation of opportunities for people with an intellectual or developmental disability to live full and valued lives in all aspects of society. The organization was founded in 1957 by parents whose children were not legally allowed to obtain an education in our public schools. And NBACL has evolved over the past 60 plus years and now works on initiatives that touch almost every aspect of the lives of people who have an intellectual disability in New Brunswick. So the Disability Support Program is a unique program offered by the New Brunswick Department of Social Development to adults aged 19 to 64 who have an intellectual, developmental, or physical disability or mental illness and are financially eligible for the program. The Disability Support Program provides funding for individuals with disabilities to access supports for unmet disability-related needs. The Disability Support Program is unique in that it provides funding for personalized, flexible, disability-related supports. And the program also encourages applicants to be actively involved in determining their own support plan. And DSP, that's the acronym for Disability Support Program. You'll hear me say that a lot through the presentation. So DSP supports are flexible and can change as needed. The support and individual needs at 19 can be very different from the supports that they need at 60. So your disability support plan could change as your goals, life circumstances, and disability impacts change throughout your life. So it doesn't always have to be the same. It grows with you, we like to say. So eligibility for the Disability Support Program. First of all, the individual requesting support must be 19 to 64 years of age, although you can begin planning 6 months before your 19th birthday. They allow for this for individuals who maybe are receiving supports through the Family Supports for Children with Disabilities program, so that those supports, or they could be different supports, but so that supports can roll over and just continue after the 19th birthday, so that there's no gap in services. And the applicant must also be a resident of New Brunswick. They must hold a valid NB Medicare number. They must have a long-term disability. So here's long-term. So I think most of the disabilities of the people who I've supported have all been long-term, but basically it just means, you know, it's not for somebody who, you know, you've broken your leg and it'll be healed in a couple months, but you're on crutches until then. So it's long-term, typically lifelong, but could, anyway, long-term disability. And they must be willing to complete a financial needs assessment. And the needs assessment is just to determine, does this person make enough money that they could potentially contribute financially to their own plan? I unfortunately don't have the tool to determine what somebody's financial contribution would be. But I can say that if somebody receives social assistance, single person rates of social assistance, they won't have to contribute financially to their plan. And I'll provide some more details on that financial piece later in the presentation. So some questions that you or the person you support might want to ask themselves before applying for a disability support plan, because sometimes people aren't really sure if they need supports, or maybe their parents or family have been providing supports thus far in their life and they're just not sure what formal supports would really look like for them. So just some questions that you can ask yourself. So, do you have a goal you need support to achieve? Do you need support to learn a new skill, especially like daily living skills? Do you need support to meet your physical and/or personal care needs? Are you going through a life transition, such as leaving high school or moving into your first apartment? Or do your natural supports need additional support to help you meet your needs? So kind of like I just mentioned, people who've been receiving disability related supports mostly from family. Well, sometimes family needs a break. People need a break from their parents or vice versa sometimes. I'm sure this recent quarantine has taught us all that. And also, as parents or caregivers age, sometimes their ability to support somebody's needs can change as well. So that could be a potential reason to seek out a DSP. So you might be asking yourself now, why is NBACL a nonprofit talking about a government run support program? Well, that's because NBACL holds a pretty unique position of independent facilitators who work in partnership with the Department of Social Development to support adults aged 19 to 64 to access the disability support program. So we work independently from the government, but in partnership with them. So NBACL's provincial independent facilitators are available to assist with identifying goals and needs for disability supports. They can assist with preparing an application for funding from the disability support program. People do have several options when it comes to applying for the program. They can apply with the support of a DSP social worker, or they can apply with the support of an independent facilitator, or they could have the right to apply on their own. I believe when people call in to apply for the program, it's actually recommended that you have support to complete the application because it's a very lengthy application. Typically, when they're completed, they're about 30 pages long. So they can be really overwhelming for people, and that's why they recommend that you apply with support. And also, independent facilitators can help individuals to apply for other government or community programs. They can also act as a representative or advocate for individuals when liaising with government and different community agencies. And in our role, we also present all support options that are available to people to help them make informed choices so that they're really involved and invested in choosing their own support plan that they know will work for them. So As independent facilitators, we utilize person-centered planning protocols to create unique plans for each individual we support. Independent facilitators are trained in person-centered planning tools, such as PATH, to assist individuals to identify their goals and plan steps to achieve those goals. So some of you might already be familiar with PATH. PATH is a visual planning tool that we use here at NBACL. It's pretty commonly used in high schools, but anybody can really request a PATH from NBACL. And this here is an example of what they look like. So you'll see over on the right, I'll try and provide a brief explanation. Over on the right, we have an image that we call the North Star image. And that is a visual representation of what is a good life, what represents a good life to that person. So you can see here in the photo that this person clearly likes nature and gardening and music and strong roots and growth. So then we work kind of backwards from that idea of what a good life means to that person to then identify some positive and possible goals that they could achieve within the next 1 to 2 years. And then we work even further backwards from those goals to discuss where are they now in terms of those goals, who can support them on the way, what strengths do they have that can help them achieve them, and then we break down some steps that they'll have to reach along the way. So that can be a really helpful tool in, determining with somebody what they'd like support with. And they're not in this alone when it comes to doing a PATH. People typically have all kinds of family and friends and other supports in the room together to help come up with this plan. It's a pretty amazing process, but I'll move on now. So independent facilitators also support individuals to meet their needs in the community whenever possible. So for example, if I was supporting somebody who is looking for work, but maybe they're having some barriers and some challenges there, I might connect them to an employment counselor who can further help them in achieving that goal. And then we can also support people to identify social and recreational opportunities in the community based on their unique interests. So for example, if I was supporting somebody whose goal was to make some new friends and they were really interested in music, I might suggest, hey, I know of an open mic night. Would you like to check that out? Maybe provide some support for them to get there and meet some people who are involved in that open mic night. However, the support for community connections from an independent facilitator is meant to be short-term. So our role isn't to provide transportation regularly or support for that person while they're there. It's more to help establish a connection, maybe to a potential natural support who's part of that social group, who can continue to support them, or if they need some additional support to continue participating in that community activity, making sure that that's reflected in the support plan that we come up with. And here's an extensive list of examples of community connections that our independent facilitators have made. So we've connected people to NB housing, employment counseling, mental health programs, the local YMCAs, public libraries, community food programs, paratransit, faith communities, LGBT groups, family resource centers, sports teams, art classes, creative writing groups, volunteer opportunities, self-esteem workshops, music events, education opportunities, community centers, and equipment loan and funding programs. So some people have asked me as we've planned together, well, is your job to deter people from government funded supports to save the government money? Is that why you do community connections? It's absolutely not. Community, it's right in NBACL's name. It's a core value of our organization. we believe that connecting people to community strengthens their sense of belonging and well-being and can promote safety. We've even found some people we've supported to create a DSP. Actually, after we've connected them with community supports, they found they don't need a DSP actually. So I think that's pretty successful, and it's nice to see as well as a member of the community that there's other members of our community that are willing to support others and be an inclusive community. So really, it's great for everybody to connect to community. And so there's a few different types of supports or streams of supports when it comes to a disability support plan. So these are the kind of options that an independent facilitator will discuss with the person they're supporting, as well as their natural support network. The first type is called self-managed supports. And this is an option where an individual or their representative could receive funds each month from the disability support program to pay for and manage their own support services. So they'd be responsible for hiring and payment and signing off for hours and all that. So some pros and cons to these different types of supports. A pro for self-managed supports would be that the funding and support hours can be rolled over into another month. So some families find this a great option, like if they like to go on long vacations on the summer or in the summer, rather than canceling a couple weeks worth of support, they can just roll that over into the next month, and they're still receiving consistent supports. Con, however, is that privately hired support workers are provided a lower wage. So that can sometimes make it difficult to hire or retain a support worker through private hire. So the other type of support is social worker managed supports. And this is where the individual's assigned DSP social worker is responsible for making payments to the agency that provides an individual's support services. So a pro to this option is that payment and hiring are taken care of by the social worker and the agency. So out of sight, out of mind, the individual receiving support doesn't have to worry about taking care of payment and signing off for hours and such. A con, however, is that those unused support hours, like if you were to say take a vacation, can't be rolled over into another month. If, say, something comes up, like a doctor's appointment, you need to reschedule your support hours for that day. Typically, you can call in and request to reschedule them, but as for a larger amount, rolling them into another month can't be done. So some commonly requested types of supports that we see as independent facilitators are human service counselors or personal support workers. And for those that are unfamiliar with those two roles, because sometimes people use those words interchangeably, a human service counselor is basically somebody who does with and a personal support worker does for. So the personal support worker would be somebody who might provide personal care, grooming care, housekeeping for somebody who physically is unable to do that. Whereas a human service counselor is somebody who, like in this picture here, is there to teach somebody the skills and do it with them as they learn and gain their independence in doing those things. So in the picture here, there's a support worker working with an individual to learn the bus schedule. So just as an example. Other commonly requested supports are employment support services programs. You might know these under their former acronym ADAPT. They're employment and day activity centers, although recently the mandate of these programs has shifted towards employment first. And respite care for family or caregivers, and technical support or assistive devices that are not covered by other programs. So there's a few things that DSP we know absolutely cannot fund. The first of which is recreational activities. And this sometimes comes as a shock to people, especially those who may have received supports from the government, the social development program, family supports for children with disabilities. Under that program, children with disabilities can access funding to therapeutic recreation, things that under advice of their doctor, they believe will promote their development of skills or well-being. Those types of programs can't be funded under DSP, unfortunately. I know that that's a source of disappointment for some people. It is unfortunate, but yeah. Other things they can't support are education supports, medication or supplements, or parenting supports. Yeah. So some frequently asked questions that we receive as independent facilitators. I'll just kind of go through each question and provide my answer to each. So the first that we receive is DSP a source of income? It is not. So this is kind of a common misconception, and it's easy to get confused about it because people are familiar typically with disability income support that would be through social assistance. The disability support program is separate from that. So having one doesn't necessarily mean you would have the other. So you could have a DSP but not receive the disability income through social assistance, or vice versa. You could receive that assistance but not have disability supports. So the way to think of it is this is services, the other is income, and they're separate. Next question, what happens if the DSP application is denied? So this does sometimes happen, or what can also happen is somebody's DSP application is approved with modifications. So say somebody requests 9 hours of support a week, the social worker reviews that request and says, well, you know, looking at the support needs that we've detailed here, it's hard to justify 9 hours, but we could do 6. And so some people, they get that kind of response for their DSP application, or it could be denied. So people have the option to appeal or request an administrative review of their disability support application. And they can do this administrative review on their own, or if they choose with the support of their independent facilitator. Will I have to pay for my DSP services? So this, oh, my apologies. This comes back to the part of from the eligibility slide about the financial needs assessment. Some people may have to pay a copay for their DSP provided services. This is based on income. And again, I don't have that formula that they use to determine what somebody's copay would be, but some people may, depending how much they make through employment. Will my disability support services be cut off if I am employed? I say not necessarily. As mentioned above, your employment income could mean you have a copay for your services, but they wouldn't necessarily cut off support services if you need them. Yeah, so people can work, and I've known quite a few people who work and still receive disability support services. And will my parents' or partner's income be considered in the financial assessment? So parents' income is not considered, even if you're living together. So if it's an adult child living at home, parents' income is not considered in the financial assessment. However, if you have a partner whom you live with or are married to, their income would count in that financial assessment, because you'd be considered one household unit. And can the facilitator find me an apartment? This might sound funny, but we do receive these questions a lot. So simply put, no. We can connect people, however, with the appropriate supports who can support them with housing. So it might be the social inclusion program here at NBACL if they qualify for that program, or other community resources that support people to find housing. And can the facilitator find me a group home? This one's also typically no. NBACL's philosophy and vision is for all people to be included in the community, and typically group homes don't make that easy. So it's part of our contract with social development in helping people create their disability support plan that we don't support people to move into group homes or special care homes. There's sometimes exceptions to these, but they're quite rare. They're very specific. And can NBACL play for blank service? Fill in the blank. So NBACL are not the funders of people's disability support plans. We're there independently as a neutral party to help people plan. So funding for those services doesn't come from us. It comes from the Department of Social Development. So if, say, we're planning together for a disability support plan, somebody might ask me, well, can this service be covered? And I might have the answer right away, or I might have to look into it and get them the answer. If it's after they've already completed their plan with me and we're a few months or a few years down the road and somebody has a question like this, I'd probably direct them to their DSP social worker, as they're the ones who would, be putting in that requisition for that service if it is something that's covered. Those are our frequently asked questions, and this is our contacts for all of our independent facilitators by region. As you can see, we cover the whole province. I included this map here of the different regions, just because I know personally I'm terrible with geography. So you can look there and find your corresponding region and facilitator if you'd like to get in contact with them. I'm gonna flip ahead just a moment, but I will come back to this slide in case people need a few more moments to copy down that information. Oh, sorry to see a question coming in here. Yeah. Oh. I'm gonna move on to questions, but I'll come back to those two previous slides. So I have a question here. If a client receives DSP services that are managed by a DSD social worker, so Department of Social Development, who is the contact person? The social worker at DSD or the independent facilitator at NBACL? So if they're already receiving their DSP services, the contact person would be their social worker. The social worker manages that plan, or if it's self-managed supports, they oversee that plan. They're still the ones to approve if that person qualifies for that funding. So the social worker would be the contact. Any other questions that anybody might have? I'm gonna flip back while we do questions to the contact slides in case anybody needs some extra time to copy those down. No problem.
Hello.
Oh, hi, yes.
I just would like to know the income bracket where they cut down that you cannot get help.
To be honest, I'm not sure what that number is. Social development keeps a formula to determine those numbers. And I unfortunately don't have access to that. I believe they also change it, through the years as income goes up or the market fluctuates. So I unfortunately don't have that information. I can say if somebody receives social assistance that they won't have a copay for their services. And it is sliding scale. So it's based on the income. So there's not necessarily a cutoff point. Say somebody makes $75,000 a year, it would be percentage of that amount each year they would be required to contribute towards their services.
Where do we get that information, detailed information?
You could contact social development to request that information through the needs assessment department.
Okay.
I don't have their contacts on me at the moment, but if you contacted your independent facilitator for the region, they could probably help you get in touch with that section of social development. Does that answer okay? I'm sorry, I don't have that formula. I see another question here. My child is not 19 yet and is followed by NBACL for other services at school. Will he be the worker I have? Sorry, will worker I have be the person I reach to when he's close to 19, or do I call the number for my region and reapply? So at NBACL, we do our best to do what we call seamless support. So the person that your child is working with at school, they wouldn't be the person to support them with the DSP, but if you express to them that you're interested in the independent facilitation program, they can do a seamless support meeting to introduce your family and your child to one of the facilitators, and so that it's not like calling and doing paperwork again, and just to make that transition. I hope that answers that okay. I was told that disability support program doesn't apply on First Nation reserves in New Brunswick. Is that true? To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I'm based out of Region 2, and I don't believe within my region there's many, if any, First Nations communities. But I do know from another facilitator who ran into that issue previously that an individual she supported wasn't able to receive supports from the provincial disability support program as they lived on a First Nations reserve. So yeah, unfortunately they don't, and there may be another program through First Nations like Child and Family Services or federal government to address supports. So if the young adult lives with their parents, their salary does not fall into consideration for him to get DSP. Correct, yeah. So it's just that the child's income, the parent's income does count towards social assistance income if the young adult is interested in getting financial assistance. There's some money that be taken off of their check for living with their parents, basically like a room and board amount. They could still potentially receive social assistance, but yes, for disability support program, the financial assessment is just for your child, not for the parent's income. I'm just going to flip to the next slide if anybody wants to copy down some of these resources. Some are available. The top ones are available through the NBACL website. The others are available at these links provided here. Any other questions? I'll give you guys a few minutes to type if you need to. Or feel free to turn your microphone on too if you'd rather just ask the question verbally, that's fine too. For estate planning, You can really reach out to anybody at NBACL. It's not a specific program that we offer. We have a resource on our website. If you don't have access to like a computer or whatever, we can provide that information in print for people. It's kind of like a guide on how to leave a will or estate to a family member with a disability in a way that's going to best provide for them without any sort of government clawbacks to those things. I have met people who have believed that their child with a disability cannot own a house, and that's untrue. So there's some information in there about what a family member with a disability can access from an estate. And our website is for these websites through NBACL, these resources. I realize I didn't provide the website on here. It's nbacl.nb.ca.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, it's nbacl.nb.ca. I'll also type it in the chat here.
Okay.
There we go. Oh, sorry, that was just to one person. My apologies. Everyone. Oh, no. There, that should have sent to everybody. All right, so any other questions? Last call. All right, well, if there's no more questions, I'll end the meeting. It was great to, answer your guys' questions. And if anybody has any more, feel free to reach out at my email. I'll briefly flip back to the previous page here, or to any of the facilitators on this list here. They'd all be happy to answer any questions you might have. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening,
Bye.
everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.